The Iron Mike story. So we've probably been talking off camera for over 20 years. Now what we've got to try and do today is talk on camera in a way that people that watch this episode learn a bit about you, learn a bit about the journey, and hopefully in such a way they can take some things away from it that might be of benefit to them. So you've played over 500 professional games now, to do my research, in a journey that's taken you from Torquay to Southampton to Wickham to Watford to Portsmouth to Newcastle, where you spent the bulk of your career and where we're going to spend a lot of time talking about today, and then down through Wolves to Oxford, and now to player coach at Gateshead. My first question is, 20 years ago when we started working together, if I'd have said to you that was going to be the journey, question one is, would you have believed me? And question two is, would you have taken it?
Yes and yes, 100%. Like you say, back then it was, I had a drive, but I didn't have a vision. I didn't have a belief in that. So yeah, bumping into someone like yourself was the start of that journey.
Yeah, we'll come on to that when we first got together. But do you think, even as, say, I think you were 16 when we started, even at 16, did you think, I'm going to play in the Premier League, I'm going to do all these things, I'm going to have a 20-year career? Or was there more an element of doubt that needed to be propped up by something or somebody?
So I was YTS on £45 a week, sitting in the boot room at Torquay United, and the actual conversation I can remember vividly as anything. The guy whose boots I was cleaning was on £1,000 a week, and one of the lads said, if you could sign £1,000 a week for the rest of your career, would you take that right now? 100%. I was thinking about what house I could buy, what car I could drive, family, and I was like, yeah, I'd definitely take that. I
remember when we were moving house and Tony Adams called you, and I thought that was quite cool at the time. We were lifting a sofa up into my house, I think it's 2004, and I don't know if it was £400 or £900, but they were paying you a bit more money than you were on. And I remember at that point you being really excited about getting this amount of money. And of course, not that we want to talk too crassly about money, but you ended up earning a lot more than that. It's interesting, actually. I was talking to Jonesy last night.
Yeah.
Talking to Stuart Jones. He's going to be one of Molly's mentors and bodyguards at Bristol Uni. I'm not sure there could be anybody better than Jonesy to be a bodyguard.
Yeah, you're right.
So I was chatting to him and I said you were down this weekend, and he said he's done amazing. He's done amazing. But I think Jonesy was one of the pros there, as I remember it. I think he was one of the pros. So you would have taken this career. There's no regrets. There's nothing that you think when you started out, I missed out. I didn't achieve that thing. You would have taken this career.
Yeah, 100%. I could never look back with any doubt that I didn't try and squeeze as much juice and still squeeze in as much juice.
You're still squeezing
I
juice.
Possibly can out of it. And like you say, you definitely reflect back and there's things I would have done differently, and still things now that I'm trying to sharpen up on and narrow and streamline. But the fact is, for the point of where I was, my level of belief, my level of doubt, my level of confidence, the fact that I'm always looking to unearth something that can make me better, and until I unearth that, then I don't know about it. And that is, for me, there's no regrets.
That sounds a bit like next practice, which we're going to talk about, because we are going to try and define for people what next practice means, because I think it's been a key component of your journey. It's a philosophy that probably I taught you and that we believe in very strongly, and that any athlete I work with, Kev Nicholson says to me all the time, now that he's working at Exeter, he tries to explain to people what next practice means. So we're probably going to come on to that today. So let's go right back to the beginning, to even before we met and we started working. So where did the love affair with football begin? So I remember very vividly November the 30th, 1980, getting taken to Plainmoor with my old man. I was 4 years old. I wasn't tall enough to see over the barrier. I had to stand on a little wooden stool. I stood exactly where the away dugouts are at Plainmoor now. I remember vividly how green the grass was, how bright the lights were. I remember how big Steve Cooper's calves were. Steve Cooper was a striker for Torquay. I remember the smell of what they called liniment, it's horse rub they used to call it.
Elements,
I remember that smell. I remember everything. I still have the programme. And at that moment, football and Torquay United and Plainmoor were imprinted in my brain and my heart, and it was going to be my thing. I was going to be a pro footballer, which never happened for me. Where did your love affair start?
Yeah, I wish I had such a vivid, specific story about it. I haven't really. my dad used to play locally, and he's very passionate about it. And my brother's 6 years older than me. Every day, pushing. One day, he turned around and said, "Dad, I don't like football." So his kind of idea was, I'm not going to push, my next son into it, and he didn't. And it was just a gradual progression. And obviously, going into the psychoanalyst side of it, I think that I craved my dad's attention, and it was just something that because 6 years old, I moved down to Devon, and was obviously just knocking about, and it was Brixham and Kingswear Rovers was my first team.
Brixham and Kingswear Rovers.
Yeah, that was where.
That's where Mike was born.
That's where I started. Yeah, and I literally just saw him training one day and went over, and I started playing. And I was playing 2 years above myself, and I just got the thrill of competing, and I think that's been the biggest kind of.
That was the hook.
Yeah, well, that's definitely what hooked me. The element of competing with, bigger, stronger kids than me, but holding my own.
Yeah, proving yourself. We should probably let the viewers know that me and you talk about some right in-depth, crazy shit. So when we talk about craving parents' affections, we often have conversations about psychology. Anthony Robbins about, which parent did you crave the attention of, etc. And I think that a number of children, for example, I'm sure that my connection to football came because of, wanted my dad's attention, etc.
Yep.
And I'm sure it's the same for a lot of children. At what point did Brixham and Kingswear Rovers start to put a picture in your head that football might be my thing, football might be my career and my livelihood? At what point did you kind of make that connection?
Well, I never made the connection that it might be kind of my livelihood and might anything to do with. For me, when I look back, it was always just a next step, and I had so much doubt and fear of failure that I could get to the next step. I think that was the main driving force to push me in my current situation. So it was literally ladder, step by step by step. So when I went in training there, the nerves, the adrenaline I would have felt, it was like, anytime I took a step up, that kind of that feeling, that anxiety was there. It was evident, and but that also just internalized into adrenaline, and it made me be the best version of me.
At that age, were you a standout? So at that age, were you the player that all the parents said he's the best in the team, or were you just another player?
I think that I was always talked about in terms of my physicality, because at that time I was playing 2 years above myself.
Yeah.
So the fact that I was handling myself, and the fact that I think I gained those lads' respect through that, I was spoken about, but it was never for my technical ability. It was I was a worker, and I was playing centre midfield at the time.
Right.
So I was box to box, smashing people. I love the fight, the battle.
You were like a Kevin Nolan or a Czech TNT. Rest his soul. The reason I ask it is when we had Sam Dodge on the podcast, I asked him about how much were the great rugby players made and how much were they born, and Dodge probably came down a bit more on the side of they were a bit more born, whereas me and you would obviously say we're not big on talent, we're big on their made.
Yep.
And my guess is that probably you were a bit more made, although there was some talent underneath it. You mentioned fear of failure. We're going to talk about fear today, and we ask it all the time, is fear a good source of motivation? People know that I think it's a great source of motivation. We'll come back to that. Would you say that there was fear even then?
Yes.
That even at 6, 7, 8?
Yes.
Would you say that fear stayed with you throughout your career?
Yes.
Is that fear still there today?
When I want it to be.
Good. We'll come back to that.
When I want it to be,
We'll come back to that.
100%.
So we met in March 2000. Mm-hmm. I have, with my OCD photographic memory, a very, very, very vivid memory of meeting you. And one of the things, we talked about this a few months ago when you were down, I said, one of the things that as a coach, a trainer, a mentor, etc., I think what I do, and probably what others do, is when they meet a young athlete or they meet someone, they very quickly make a decision about what's the best thing they could do for them. And I remember when I met you, there were two things that I thought, there are these things I need to give to him. He has no chance without them. What do you remember about us meeting and the very early days back in that great 6A Dartmouth Road? Amazing gym.
Yeah.
Tough gym.
I remember, walking up the stairs and kind of, being very nervous, being unsure. The environment was, it was not intimidating, but I knew that I just wanted to go and seek it out. I wanted it again. I was looking for another modality to make me better, and I'd not really come across strength and conditioning to the capacity that obviously you were delivering at. So I remember walking in and just getting a feel for it, and the first few months, 6, probably 12 months, it was kind of just showing up, doing the programs, speaking to you. I felt as though any time I could come over to you and speak to you and just kind of pick your brains and Johnny as well. It was a case of just getting what I could. But I also remember being so nervous that you went, after a session, you went, go and make yourself a shake, recovery shake. Yeah, no problem. And you said there's a blender, water filter there, sort it all out. And I ended up putting...
I remember this,
I ended up putting my protein powder into the water filter.
I remember.
And I was sat there thinking, what's meant to happen now? Because I'd not come across this at home or anything. I don't think we'd ever come across protein shakes before.
I remember.
And I was
that.
like, is it going to kind of dispense out the bottom? And it didn't. And I took the top off and it was all congealed. I was like, shit.
I didn't coach you how to make protein shakes very well, did I? So my memories, first of all, I loved that gym. Everybody will know that. There's still got loads of members here now. 6A Dartmouth Road was a shithole. But the atmosphere, I think you would attest to, was electric. Because everybody that was there to train and improve themselves. I was very young, very energetic. So we mentioned Jonesy. So Jonesy and Brando were obviously training at the gym, and you were a schoolboy or an apprentice at the time. So I remember that. I remember you coming in with Kenny Griffiths, who still plays in golf with Buckland, a real good friend of mine. And I remember being struck immediately by what I could see was drive. So I think to a coach like me, there are certain things that are very attractive, and there are certain things that are a complete turn-off. So I think ego that hasn't been earned is something that turns me off. I just don't want to be around it, drags me down. I can think of certain footballers that I had to interact with at Torquay that perhaps I didn't want to be around with, that Kevin maybe brought in, and I didn't want to be around, they dragged me down. Then on the flip side of that, there are people like you, like Amy, like Gary Willis, you remember Gary Willis, rugby player, that almost give you this spark where you can sense they have certain things, and as a coach you feel you fit with them. I remember being very drawn to your drive. I knew that you were serious about wanting to be really good, and I made a decision probably within about the first 90 seconds about what I was going to do for you, and it's probably never changed in over 20 years. I decided I had to give you the power of vision. I had to really unwrap for you how to create a really strong vision and stay addicted to it, because I knew the journey was going to be a long one. There's not many people from Torquay make it anywhere in professional sport. It's very rare. Your distance travelled is probably bigger than anybody, okay, from all the things you went through, which we're going to come on to with your journey. But the biggest thing I knew I had to give you was toughness. I knew that without incredible toughness, you would never get that far. We spoke recently about the benefit of boot camps, for sports teams, and we both say that, doing push-ups in the mud and jumping off cliffs doesn't help you deliver a free kick, doesn't help you, make a better pass. We agree on that. But I think we also agree that there is an intangible in training to be tough, and that at times things like boot camps, which like the England cricket team have done and the rugby team, etc., might have a significant impact on winning or losing. I felt that I had to put you in a position whereby every day you wanted to quit, and I just bullied you because I thought, unless I make him tough and give him a vision, this will never happen. And when I look back, I think I did okay. I think I made a good call. I think you, Amy and Gary are the three toughest athletes, and probably the three I enjoy working with the most, because I like toughness. I don't like people that make excuses, that's pretty obvious. And you had this incredible vision, which for a young man, I think you were 16 at the time, to be able to do that was very rare. Most 16-year-olds were interested in a lot of other things. So that's my memory of the early days. What do you remember about the actual training we did? I remember a few of them.
Well, I remember talking about the actual gym itself. Like, I know now when I walk in, I'm in a new area, I'm on holiday, this or the other, I walk in, I sense the environment, I get the energy, and obviously the spit and sawdust, that kind of old school, I know that's what I'm attracted to now, because it's that chemistry, that energy, and I think that's what was there. It was that old school, just could work hard. And so initially I wouldn't have gone in there and think identified, but that's what made me enjoy it and get that energy in there because I was around people, whether they were grunting, screaming, whatever, sweating, throwing weights. It was, like I say, it was infectious. I was a quiet lad in the corner, like looking around, like pushing myself, and that's what
I think the phrase is iron sharpens iron. And when we talk about environments and cultures at sports teams, I think the verse actually is something like as iron sharpens iron, man sharpens man. And I think that back then, probably without knowing it, what we had was an environment where iron sharpened iron, and where everyone that came in got some energy and got some kind of unwritten rules about how hard you pushed yourself from that environment. I always look back on those first couple of years, and I still miss that. I'm actually going boxing there on Monday. The first time I've been back there since I got rid of it. I'm boxing. It's now a boxing club, and I'm boxing there on Monday. It's the first time I've been in the doors in over 10, 12 years. So I'm really excited to go back and get a vibe off it. I remember the beach workout we did. Me, Brando, you and Ben Roundtree, who was a rugby player. Ben Roundtree and Brando were Chris Brandon, who played for Torquay at the time, were very gifted athletes. They were far more gifted than you. They were quicker than you on the sand. But I remember leaving that workout and feeling like he's going to go a lot further than them, because you were tenacious. They were slightly more gifted, and they were great athletes and hard workers. Brando was an incredible hard worker. But I remember the beach workout and the sprint work we did up the hills and the steps and all that stuff. I remember thinking, this kid is tenacious. He ain't going to quit. I also remember the deadlift workout we did on a Sunday afternoon when I was doing some work for Torquay at the time, and Roy McFarlane was the manager. And I remember knowing that physiologically what I was doing to you was wrong. It was too much. You were going to be, the DOMs you were going to have were going to be so extreme that you probably weren't going to train for 3 days, which I don't think you did.
3 weeks.
I think Roy was fine with it. But I remember at the time, we had a great energy. We were training in Torquay. It was Sunday afternoon after hours, about 5 o'clock. We were deadlifting. You were trying to pull 4.5 plates, I think it was. And you couldn't quite do it. And I remember deciding that I was just going to bully you and call you soft, weak. I called you a lot worse, which I won't say on camera. But I thought to myself, like, this kid's hungry. I just need to make him tougher. So I remember we deadlifted and did some other crazy stuff for about 2 hours. And then I remember Roy Mack saying to me on the Monday, what the hell have you done to him? Like, he can't move. Do you remember that workout?
Yeah.
I think that the example, the reason I raise it, is that now I'm a man of science. Everything I give people is very, scientifically based. But I do think there is still a place at times for challenging people to be tougher, because I think it has a huge intangible benefit. And if they believe they can't be broken, that maybe it helps them down the line. Looking back on the very early days, where I would say our training was rough and ready. We sprinted, we jumped, we threw, we lifted heavy as shit. Would you say that kind of left a significant imprint that did prepare you for some of the stuff that was to come, like playing in front of 50,000 every week?
100%, yeah, definitely. I think, like you
wouldn't
say,
change it.
No chance. No. Like for me, that was the grounding I had. I think when you say made or born, I think I had this desire of just like I will do what it takes and I won't quit. So when I'm stood over a bar, like so now when I'm training with yourself and I feel like my tank is empty and we're half an hour into the session, that's for me now. It's like, this is where the juice is. This is where what my thoughts saying to me, what's my body saying to me, how, and then what have I got left and what can I create? Because obviously the mind and the body, look at that. So that's where the juice is. So at the time, it was just a case of like feeling all of these emotions, being in my own head, but I've got to get through it. I've got to find a way. So
I remember another very distinctive workout. I don't know if you do. It was the season that you'd just been promoted with Newcastle. So I think it's 2010, and it's when the gym was at Nortel, the paint gym was at Nortel. And on a Sunday morning in the off season, I actually think you'd driven directly from Newcastle. I think you actually just come down the night before. You might have even come directly to the gym. There was me, you, Doolin, and Sam Essen.
I remember.
And we had a pretty ferocious lower body workout. It was ferocious. And then we went outside with the prowler and we did some band resisted prowler work. And we did the sets and reps that I'd prescribed. And then I just had this sense that it wasn't enough. So do you remember, we said we're going to go prowler suicide till people quit. So Sam was being sick in one flower bed, Doolin was laying in the mud on the other side, and we just kept going. And I remember thinking, I'm pretty good with endurance, I'm just going to keep going till I break him. And I think we probably get going for an extra half an hour on this thing. There was no physiological, scientific reason for that. I thought to myself, like, he's got a fair bit of money now, he's a big time footballer, but I need to make sure he still retains his toughness. Do you remember that workout?
Yep.
Do you think that those tough workouts played a significant part in the challenge, in helping you deal with the challenges that were to come?
100%, yeah.
Would you prescribe them for young athletes now to do things that are sometimes a little bit uncomfortable and painful?
Well, obviously we've come on to Gateshead, but we've been in for 2 weeks, we've been off for 10 days and we're about to go in, and there's going to be some character workouts there, so I think I am prescribing them because, like you say, there might be no physiology or the kind of rhyme or reason in terms of the technical and tactical side that's going to correlate, but what it is going to show me is an insight. When we've done a session and then we've pushed it a little bit more and the lads are empty and they think that they're done, and then I go, now we're doing this, and then I'm going to see the characters, because I'm sure I'll see characters that are moaning but get on with it. I'm sure I'm seeing characters that won't say anything and end up quitting, and the lads that will be pushing and leading the group, and that's going to give me the insight.
I think it's a really, we could spend hours discussing this, the difference between, everything should be guided by safety and physiology and science versus almost that David Goggins type, never quit and pain. I'm probably, I've almost gone full circle with it, where I'm back towards, I think people need to be a bit tougher, and I think we've probably got to this point. S&C has grown into this huge business. You've got people dishing out advice that don't really have a clue what they're doing. You've got footballers' careers being ruined because the S&C advice they get is actually limiting them and reducing their speed and reducing their mobility. So I'm probably more than ever on the side of, if I was with you at Gateshead, and if Gateshead was here, I'd love to do Gateshead. Gateshead's a great club. I'd be full on beast mode. They would get a tougher version now than you got 20 years ago.
Yeah, but what I see with what you're saying, the way society in general has gone, you're getting the science has gone above and beyond. You've got all the extra trimmings. Yeah. But if by doing all these extra trimmings and training clever, you're taking out the core, the bulk, so when I'm looking at Premier League lads that are earning 5-6 grand a week, and they're literally just turned 17 and they haven't played, kicked a football with the first team, it's creating a soft underbelly. Yeah. So the extra peripheral kind of stuff will only get you to a certain. For me, when it ultimately everybody's going to fail. So whether it's a set in the gym, whether it's conceding on a Saturday, or whether it's being released from a football club, or even being divorced or whatever it is, it's how you respond to that failure. Yeah. And if you can do all these box jumps and your nutrition's on point and this or the other, but if you haven't got that toughness, that grit inside of you, then ultimately I think the cards they're going to come tumbling down. We spoke
to your brother's boy, didn't we, about purpose and about toughness coming from purpose. We might come on to that. So I remember very clearly having a conversation with Mike Bateson, who was chairman at Torquay at the time. I was stood behind the goal of the home end. He owed me some money. I was doing some work for Torquay. He said, "Is it okay if I pay at the end of the year?" I said, "Yeah, sure, Mike, no problem." I said, "You can pay me the money you owe me at the end of the year, but I want half of the money you get." I think I've told you the story when you sell Mike Williamson. He said, "Who's Mike Williamson?" I said, "Mike's an apprentice, but he's going to go big time, okay? I want half the money." He looked at me and laughed. I said, "Yeah, sure." I think he was sold to Southampton. I can't remember if it was 200 or 400 grand. I can't remember exactly. I never got the money. I never expected the money. But I think we should now get on to kind of the journey. You made your debut for Torquay at Bristol City, didn't you, away in a League Cup? I can't remember what the name of the cup was back then. And unbeknown to you, there was a Southampton scout in the stand, and I believe you walked into my Torquay gym and said, "I'm leaving." And I thought, well, he's had enough of me. I said, "What do you mean you're leaving?" He said, "I'm going to Southampton." I said, "Wow." So what do you remember of the Southampton experience, going from Torquay as a kind of an apprentice in a very small place to Southampton, who at the time were a Premier League team, and it was Gordon Strachan and Steve Wigley, who I know you've spoken a lot about.
Yeah.
What do you remember about Southampton?
So, I mean, just touching on the Torquay, so I played 4 games for the first team, and from what I can remember, it was 4 days, possibly the week. By the time I heard that there's an interest and there's a possibility, then I was travelling, because I remember sitting down with my parents and they were like, "Is this what you want?" And I was like, "Well, yeah." And they was like, "Do you not think staying a season with Torquay will develop you?" And I said, "Well, to be honest, I don't know, but this is a Premier League football club and this opportunity is on my doorstep. Again, possibly the doubt, the lack of vision, this might never happen to me again. So I need to go for it. But by and large, I didn't have a decision. Talkie said, you're gone. Like,
you're gone,
we need the money. You're getting sold. If you do choose to say you're not going to feature this out there, it's football behind the scenes. So walking into Southampton as a young kid, I was like, right, okay, contract was, this is what it is. Right, okay, have you got an agent? No, right, we've got some agents that we work with. Okay, oldest trick in the book. Oh yeah, so take it or leave it. Right, okay. So I signed for peanuts. For me, I'm happy for the opportunity. I'm happy. Walking, have a look around the stadium, blows me away. They took me out, took my parents out, paid for hotels, food, and all this. And this was just another world.
Like a dream.
So we were sold. Walked into the training ground, and Gordon Strachan was walking along, and first thing he said to me, he was just like, we paid a lot of money for you, boy, you better be good. And I was like, stood there like,
toughness.
Right, okay. Didn't really know how to respond. I was like, I'll do my best, kind of thing. And it was the toughest 3 years of my life. I'll probably go to the extent at that point, it was the hardest 3 years of my life.
What was hard, being away from home?
Well, within one day, I'm sat there writing headlines in the Herald Express. I'm living with my parents. I've got all my school friends around me. I've got my missus, childhood sweetheart. Just passed my test. I was like, I was comfortable. I was comfortable. So, and then next week, I'm walking into a Premier League club, walking into the lodge at Southampton, they used to call it. Firstly, with 20 Premier League prospects that have all got these egos, cars, attitudes, mindsets, the way they talk, the way they dress, the way that. And then also, there was a documentary going on. So they were like, oh, do you mind, you've got your initial interview for a documentary. They're doing a documentary called The Academy on Southampton Football Club. So I was like, right, okay. So I'm sat there in my room. Obviously sink, just it's the tiniest little room, doing this documentary, and they're asking me, what are your aspirations? What is this? What's that? And I'm just kind of like lost. I was like deer in headlights. I'm just like, I just want to do my best, just this or the other. And like for me, obviously me, I'm probably introverted. I like my own time, like my own space, like my own headspace. Being around big groups of people when I was younger used to make me, wasn't really my natural environment. So initially it was the worst thing. So play a game on the Saturday, I'd be straight in my car as quick as I could, straight down the 303, back to Devon, and I had to be back on Sunday evening by a certain time. So I remember sitting with my parents, like looking at the clock ticking, thinking, no, I'm going to wait. I'm thinking, right, I've got to go now. But I'll just another half an hour and I'll put my foot down to make it in there so I don't get fined. Just did not want to go back. Hated every minute of it, to be honest.
I think we're going to come on to a section called Living the Dream. I think for most young people, like it was for me, being a professional footballer was always the dream. I think there are a number of components of being a professional footballer that are probably a bit tough and that people maybe don't realise, and I think that's one of them. I think there are a number of young men who have great talent, great opportunity, but maybe can't handle some of those type of circumstances that you talk about, and that's probably why they fail. Looking back, did that become further toughness training, that process of,
like I say, hardest 3 years of my life, but best when I look back.
Why didn't you quit? Why didn't you turn around and say, I'm going to go back home, I'm going to play for Newton Spurs and work in the factory? Why didn't you quit?
I couldn't.
Why couldn't you quit?
I wanted to, but I couldn't.
Why couldn't you quit? What stopped you quitting?
The fact that letting myself down and walking away, letting my parents down, letting the people around me down. But ultimately, I use people that is outside of me, but ultimately I just think it was myself. Even if I didn't have a family, didn't have anybody standing there that I found, I think it would be myself. Just like, this is what you want, this is where, and this is, partly this is the process. So I think, like I say, so many things happened at Southampton as well that I can recall writing a car off and flipping.
I remember,
having to pay for it.
I remember.
Went out with the lads on a Friday, just went swimming to the local flumes, getting beat 5-1 by Aston Villa on the Saturday for the 21s. The manager saying I'll never play for him again. like little things like this. I'm just like.
Not that it left a
felt
mark.
like I was the only one as well, because obviously I'd been brought in. He had his group of players, and that's the other, so I was getting dug out. But yeah, ultimately, like I say, it was when I look back now, the kind of anguish, the emotions I went through. It was very much tough, and that was where I started this. I mean, the first 2 appearances for the 21s, I threw up on the pitch. So I was sat there in the dressing room, and I just always remember just feeling like ridiculously tired, like before games. And I was eating differently, sleeping differently. I was trying to change my prep. I'd get to the changing room, I'd just be like yawning, and I'd be like trying to hide it behind, like, because the manager's there thinking, do you know what I mean? I don't want to be disrespectful. I don't want to see him. Yawn, and then I ran out on the pitch, and I just felt like, oh my God, I'm going to be sick. So I actually went down, started doing a groin stretch, and I threw up on the pitch. And I was like, and it made me feel better, obviously, at the time. But I was like, I don't know what's going on. I have to figure this out.
Yeah, I can't remember your nerves. Do you remember the affirmation we used to have, the question that was, what shapes the football? Do you remember that?
Yeah.
So I remember your nerves, and I remember saying to you, look, nerves are a good thing, and you'll learn to overcome them. And one of the techniques we used was we tried to center you by saying, what shapes the football today? And I used to say to you, is this for the football square today? Is it a cube? Is it oblong? And the whole idea was to try and make you to realise the football was round, the grass was green, and that nothing ever really changed from Brixham and Kingswear. But I do remember that. So if Southampton served as a kind of proving ground, if we use that phrase, you had a couple of loans, one back to Torquay, one to Doncaster, didn't actually play for Doncaster, and then you were sold to Wickham, which I think you look back on as quite a happy time. I believe you were made captain at Wickham. The team was successful. I think you played almost over 100 games at Wickham. Tony Adams was a manager, Paul Lambert I think initially, and then Tony Adams?
No, Tony Adams brought me there, took me there.
And then it was Paul Lambert, was it, I think?
Tony Adams then, there's a little interim, and then Paul Lambert eventually came in.
So what I remember, like I say, we were moving house the day you signed for Wickham, the day you agreed a deal, and I remember thinking, it's going to be a good deal, it's going to be a good move. What are your memories of the kind of Wickham experience? If Southampton served as a proving ground, was Wickham where you started to build belief about what you could actually achieve?
Yeah, well, quickly just touching on the end of Southampton, I remember, like I say, Gordon Strachan was just fierce. He was just like fiery Scott. He had his old school mentality. I mean, like, you can understand why he's built his map of the world, because he's played to 40 unbelievable Man United. Do you know what I mean? Incredible career. So that's how he had, this is how you achieve it, and this is what's done. And he would push everyone mentally. I mean, we ran around the New Forest and on the track and this, that, the other, and he would do these kind of sessions, and that was his mentality. But I remember standing with Steve Wigley, and we were watching first team training, and he was releasing me, and he was just like, listen, he said, if I was a League Two manager, I would 100% take you. You've got you've got the physicality, you've got the desire, you've got the grit, you develop into a leader, but I'd question anything higher than that. And he's like looking over the first team, and he's just like, out there's nothing other than being a minefield. The strongest survive, and you have to be resilient. You have to have thick skin. And it's up to you now to go away and prove I was wrong. And at the time, I was just, all I was hearing was being released. Do you know what I mean? You're not good enough. So I think the time up until I kind of got the contract offer and spoke to yourself, I just felt a massive rejection, and like, you're not good enough. And in my head, I had all these headlines from the Herald Express of like, it's going to be next Premier League thing, this, that, the other, and my parents kind of, thinking, right, this is where the journey starts, this is where it gets going, and I failed, and I'm like, I'm back at League Two where I was 3 years ago. Now I'm older, so I'm even worse position than I was, being this had all this potential, being a 17-year-old playing in this league. So I was kind of like in a little bit of, so come down, see yourself, and get my head right. Got the offer. Not sure it's relevant to my football career, but the day I left for Wickham, my childhood sweetheart come to me and said, I'm pregnant.
I remember.
And I was like, okay. I was like, right, so what do you think?
I remember the phone call. You called me on a Tuesday night at 9:15. I'd just finished work in the Torquay gym, and I was at Sainsbury's in the car park, just about to go and do my shopping. I remember you calling me, and I remember you being, I would say, anxious. and a little unsure about things. Do you remember the conversation?
I remember how you made me feel about the situation.
Yeah.
About good. You know, this is going to be...
I think I would never take the role of making a decision for somebody, but I think I said to you, I think one of the things I said to you is, you know, do you think that having a child at your age, you know, would be like a great gift and a great honour, or might it hold you back in life a little bit? And you were a little bit unsure, and I said, I think it might provide you with even more motivation, even more purpose. The greatest gift you can have is to be a parent. I think this might be the best thing to ever happen to you.
Yeah.
And I remember I was late home, so Samantha was in a mood with me because I think he was on the phone for about 45 minutes. And but I remember that conversation, and Tyler arrived about 7 months later.
Yeah.
Best thing they ever did.
Yes.
Absolutely.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah. Was being a parent young a hindrance to your career, or did it actually help to push you forward? The reason I ask is I think it happens to a lot of young footballers. Was it a hindrance, or did it push you forward?
I would say there was times in my career where I see it as emotionally it was draining me, this or the other.
Yeah.
But on the nucleus of the whole situation, 100%. And I think for me to say it, it's because it's the way I've built, and with your influence, how I am built, that's not necessarily for everyone.
No, the reason I wanted to raise it is I think it actually helped you grow up even more. It gave you even more purpose. I always remember Steve Harper writing an article about you up at Newcastle saying, you know, I am Mike, he's always in the gym, loves his family, he's got his head switched on, he's got his values sorted. And I'm thinking, well, you always had that anyway. So I think actually being a parent young was very, very good for you. I think it gave you even more drive. I think I know I did it. I leveraged that immediately about don't let your fucking kid down, all this sort of stuff. I think it actually pushed you on a little bit. Yeah. So I remember that phase. Was Wickham, one other thing I should say, you're now in a position where you have to do the releasing of players. I think you've just done it for a few over the last few months. Do you ever look back and think, I remember this happened to me at Southampton, so I want to be a little bit kind of, do you use the Steve Wigley approach of fucking, you know, prove me wrong?
100%. Yeah. And also, I mean, for me, what I got from Steve Wigley was just brutal honesty. So, however emotionally, you know, I wanted to take it, that's what I needed. It's what I wanted. So that's all I can be. Yeah. And you know, release it, lads, and just say, listen, you know, it's because of this. Yeah. If I need this, you know what I mean, which I don't feel as though you have at the minute. Yeah. But you need to go away and use this to prove me wrong, and to come back in a couple of years' time and, you know, get on my face and say, you know, sounds like you're wrong.
Sounds like great advice from a good coach. Like you say, he's brutally honest with you. He's actually giving you a bit of a map to say, look, go and improve this. I think that's a great way of doing it. I think one of the real big questions is, if he has that conversation with 100 Iron Mikes, okay, how many say, I'm going to prove you wrong, and how many take that as an opportunity to, what I always say, get off the bus and to quit and go and play for Newton Spurs and go on the piss and work in a factory. Maybe there's nothing wrong with that, but that would be one of the questions, is what was it that kept Iron Mike going? Let's go back to Wickham. Did Wickham start to rebuild your belief? Did Wickham start to make you think, I can do this, I can climb this mountain?
Wickham was where, I mean, I had so many great memories there. I've still got great friends. I was just at MK Dons this week with Russell Martin, who's manager now. Phenomenal guy.
I remember you being very happy at Wickham. I always remember being
I was very happy. Like I say, it was going back, it was a reset, and my personal experience there, and when I speak to the lads, it was where I thought I need to understand the mind far more in depth, because at Southampton and on my journey, I'll wake up one morning, right, I want to play the highest level I can, and I'd never say Premier League, I'd never say international, because I didn't have that vision at the time, but I'd have the highest level that I can play. I want to do that. And then after the session, I want to give up. I hate this, do you know what I mean? I hate the fact that, you know, I feel like, you know, I didn't want to receive the ball, or this, that, the other, and I've got all of these people kind of like on your back, and like I'm out of my comfort zone. And I was just like, but I know on my day I'm better than you know, the lads, not to say disrespectful, but I know I've got more to me, I know I've got more about me, so it's all down to me to harness. And I remember early on in Payton Gym, when you kind of described an analogy of having a brick wall.
Yeah.
And he's like, you've got your subconscious and your conscious, and you basically you've just got to tap through. And I remember years of me, you're the fittest player in the club, you're the best player in the club, you're this, and I was just like, this meaning nothing to me. And I was like, no, Simon said, keep on with it, repetition, right? Okay, keep going. And then it's only when I reflect back now and how it drip fed into my subconscious and into my psyche that I can see it now. And now I understand the conviction and the energy I can say it with, so I can kind of do things like that now. I can change my state just with a thought, where before it was this, this is the analogy, it's very clear, it's what I need, visual, but I'm not feeling the energy, the emotion tied with what I'm saying. So there's a bit of disconnection.
Athletes I think talk about confidence a lot, or self-confidence. How do I get confidence? And I always say to them, you build it. It's self-trust in effect. You find the fundamental skills of your profession or trade, you find quality ways to practice them, and you repeat it with quality. And if you keep doing that, you can build or restore confidence, self-confidence. And I think that's essentially what you were doing.
So I got my head in books. I spoke to you, give me some authors. Robin Sharma, Anthony
Power of
Robbins.
Subconscious Mind, Dr. Joseph Murphy.
My best book, favourite book. I've bought it so many times and give it away. But you know what? I do actually think that there's a bit of like that hit, because that was exactly what I needed at the time. That was perfect. But when I give it to other people, there's a lot of biblical, a lot of
religious
Bible speak, so I just think would it? But for me, that book it was life changing.
At your age, to read that book, so I give that book to pretty much every athlete that I think can kind of take it on board. You were very young to be taking this stuff in, but you, as you say, you had something about you where you were a searcher and a seeker, and you had this vision, and you weren't afraid to try things, treat things like a supermarket. So I remember that phase. I remember the playoffs at Wickham, where I think you lost to Rochdale. Was it 1-0?
Stockport was the one where I was captain.
So I remember that, and I remember that as at the time you feeling like the world had ended. I remember you being pretty devastated, and I remember thinking, I think it might be quite good for him to kind of go through the pain of what you thought was failure. The playoffs obviously a mini form of success. So I remember the playoffs, and then I remember like Watford to me always seems like it came and went without ever really happening. So I remember the Watford move. I think you were made captain. You worked under Brendan Rodgers and then Malky Mackay. But I don't even really remember Watford. I remember you going there, and then I remember you calling me on a Thursday night saying, Portsmouth are in for me. Watford don't really want to let me go. What do you think I should do? And I said, put in for a fucking transfer. This is the Prem. Go for it. Am I right? Was Watford like that? Was Watford 2 minutes?
So I always take Wickham as my real apprenticeship to building the foundation of the person I am now. So I learned a lot and we can touch on it before, but I remember writing my short-term, medium-term, long-term goals off the back of that. And 15 years later, my mum was like, I've had a clear out. Do you want all of this? And I remember I had nutrition diaries, all the kind of like my training diaries, everything. And I was looking for it, like, no. And then I saw goal setting. And I looked, and it absolutely blew my mind with the things I put on. Made the championship before I'm 25, 26, Premier League 27, 28. And I was like, I look back, and I was like, I had a certain criteria of a house. I had goals on there that you just can't quantify, like visit as many countries, be the best dad I can. Like I didn't have it, really. But those other things was the house, the levels. There's a few other things. I had to speak Spanish and play the guitar, which I'm still working on. It's an ongoing. That's a life. But I just remember thinking like, wow, I had them in my subconscious, and it's always been there. And to the year I got to these levels was written down.
I think a lot of people, when you talk about goal setting and visualization, parasubconscious mind, they just think that's fluffy bullshit. We obviously both realize that that's a big part of who I am, who you are, anybody I work with. I don't think visualization works. I think visualization that drives action is what works. And that, The Secret by Rhonda Clay, I think it is, that's great talking about visualization, but if you're working with me, we're going to work very hard on creating an outcome. but we're going to work even harder every day, taking the steps you need to take towards it.
Action,
So,
going back to the Watford thing, it was
quick.
We went on a Carling Cup run at Wickham, should I just touch on, beat Fulham, Charlton, Premier League, Doncaster.
Didn't you play Chelsea that
Championship? And then we got to Chelsea in the semi-finals, which is a huge achievement. Shevchenko, Lampard, Terry, Iron Robin, like all these people. And we drew 1-1 first leg at our place and went away. And just the whole journey, I remember Paul Lambert saying it clearly. He was like, you've been man of the match in most of our cup ties against these, Galactico teams and Premier League Championship teams, and then the game straight after it, you've been a bag of shit. And he's like, that can't happen. To be a top player, you have to find consistency. And I was just like, I understand that, and for me, obviously, I understand now. Obviously, the adrenaline and the kind of the spike. But I remember sitting in, and I think it was Bury away after one of the games, and I can remember thinking, like, doing this visualization. You're marking somebody that's going to be the next Drogba. He's going to be the next, and he's going to take your pants down if you're not on your game, and you're going to do this, you're going to do that. And I had a beast. And it didn't work, and I was just like, I'm locked. But that was what I took from that is you can match it with the big boys. You have got that, and that was a huge part of my belief of now I just need to find that consistency to be able to get my program, get my map, where my process to be able to replicate that game on game. So that was the start of my vision just opened up, and it was like right now. So with what I think got me to the party is just hard work, just pure grind, grit, determination. Now I started opening that vision. And then when I went to Watford, it was just 6 months of bang, you've arrived. I was under Brendan Rodgers. I think his management was just, a different level.
We'll talk about them. You've worked with some great managers. We're going to talk about those a bit later.
To whatever. But I remember coming home one day just thinking, it's starting to click now. You're starting to get it. You're starting to get all that stuff that you've been telling me over the years that I've been like, right, your subconscious this, affirmations this, goal setting this. Do you know what I mean? Action. Then I'd turn up next day and go training. So I always saw you as a recharge. I'd come down here, we'd have a training camp.
Get bullied.
I'd be driving and I'd be full of this, I'm going to go get it. I'm going to go after. I've got the key now. And then over the time when, like you say, you lie down with dogs, you get fleas. Over that time, the environment just drained me. And I always remember you just saying, when I spoke to you about your environment, it's probably how messy your car was or something. And I was like, and I asked you, and you were just like nobody penetrates this environment.
Absolutely.
And so then I created that. So regardless of the environment you're in, which has huge implications, it's like osmosis. But then I remember thinking, but if you are in control of your own process, then it doesn't matter where you are, you're going to be the driving force. Environment's
a big thing. We talk about environment a lot, and I've said to you before that I think I can affect any athlete, any client, any big footballer, whatever it is. But one of the issues you get is that if you work with them for an hour and they go back to a very negative environment, it's tough. It's tough. I always think, when I think about Torquay and we walked in, I knew I could get through to all these young kids. I knew I needed a bit of time to kind of get them to believe in themselves and to buy in and stuff. So the environment was huge. Do you remember, so you left Watford and you moved to Portsmouth. Was Avram Grant the manager, am I right? Was it Redknapp?
Avram Grant and Paul Hart. Paul Hart initially, then Avram Grant.
For people that wouldn't remember, Portsmouth were a Premier League club. They paid, I believe they agreed a deal of something like 4 million with a down payment, and they had to make more payments. Portsmouth then got into horrendous financial trouble, and you were in this crazy situation whereby Portsmouth owed money to Watford that they couldn't have, so you couldn't play. And I remember being in Boston with Molly, 2009, waking up, watching Fox TV, Everton, Portsmouth, seeing you sat on the bench, and I remember thinking, this is nuts, what's going on? Portsmouth was just a crazy period, wasn't it?
So just to touch on the situation, I was at Watford, and the club come to me and said, Portsmouth want you, Newcastle want you. Newcastle have to sell Stephen Taylor to get the money for you. That's what the situation was, what they're looking to do. So right, okay, but Portsmouth just want you now. We know that Newcastle are financially a far more stable club, so we want you to go to Newcastle. And I was like, it's, you know what I mean, I want to kind of go there as well. But they were in the Championship and Portsmouth in the Premier League. So it was a complete opposite. You had Portsmouth up here that were looking like they were on unstable ground. But in my head, I was thinking, well, I can go in there, play in the Premier League and try and, you know, keep them in the league. And Newcastle, it's not definite that they're going to go up, but that was the situation. So they were both talking similar figures, £3-4 million, but ultimately Newcastle never actually put the money on the table because obviously Stephen Taylor stayed. So I ended up going to Portsmouth, and what it was on my first appearance, it triggered an extra fee to Watford, in which they couldn't afford it. So I didn't play. So I remember sitting in the manager's office, and I was just like, why aren't I playing? Obviously, unbeknownst to me, the politics, and he was just like, you're not strong enough in the air. And I remember just sitting there thinking, I'm pretty sure that's my strength, like defend first, kind of this, that, the other. And I was like, you know, but at the time, you know, it was all going on. I was just enjoying learning off people like, you know, David James and the caliber of player that I was lucky enough to work with every day, kind of their attitude, their kind of mindset, their mentality, their self-talk, their body language, their this. So I was just wanting to be a sponge, really. Yeah,
I remember Portsmouth as being short-term, and I remember it as being a little bit frustrating. I then remember a phone call on a Monday night at about 4:30. I was on my way to the Newton Abbot gym. I was going to work with Faye, and you called me and you said Newcastle were, as you say, in the Championship at the time. Portsmouth were a Premier League club. People wouldn't realise that now, obviously. And you said, Newcastle are in for me. What do you think? It means coming down a division. And I remember saying to you, Mike, like, Newcastle is one of the biggest clubs in Europe. You know, this is a football hotbed. This is an incredible move. And the phrase that I used with you, I think it was the first time I used it with you, I've used it with you a lot, is take the seed and make it fucking rain, which basically means you can make the grass greener anywhere if you work hard enough. And sure enough, I believe you signed, initially it was on loan, wasn't it? Because there was something, you signed on loan, you played on the Tuesday night, the following week, you were man of the match. I think you won 2-0, and the love affair began. What do you remember of sort of the move, first of all, because we're going to come on to Newcastle in depth?
So, Newcastle were willing to pay 3 to 4 million for me when I was at Watford. They got me for 900 grand.
Yeah,
so
good deal.
The financial implications for Portsmouth of buy a player, obviously. But anyway, that was for me. I was sat at home, and the discussions going on. I was obviously speaking to my agent, and it was back and forward. It was like yes, no, on off, kind of. It's going to happen. It was like right, you know, it's going to. So my agent pulls up at 12 o'clock at night and says, "Jump in." So I jump in the back of his car, get my pillow, drive all the way up to Newcastle at the time.
From Portsmouth.
No. It was from Reading. It's where I was based at the time, because obviously where I was from Wickham as well. I was commuting down the M3 to Portsmouth. So got to Newcastle. Literally went in the hotel. 45 minutes sleep. My alarm went off. Go in, do my medical at like 7:30. Chris Hughton wants to play on Saturday. This was Friday, and I'm like, oh, right, I'm not slept. In my head, I'm thinking my debut for Newcastle. Like, this is going to be. Anyway, he's like, right, we just need to get everything signed and sealed. This, that, the other. So I did it. Right, so I was waiting, and the manager come, met him. Like great guy, like lovely guy. I still speak to him these days. You know, you'd be alright to play tomorrow. I was just like, yep. There's one thing as well I touch on. Going back to Southampton, I played for the 21s in a pre-season friendly on, it must have been Tuesday, and Thursday there was a first team fixture, but it was a mix between young and old, and they pulled me into that, and I'm thinking like, my legs, this, that, the other, talking about toughness. So I was like, but I'm obviously, you know, that's fine, I'm going to go play. And I know there's a few lads that'd be like, I've got tight Achilles, you know what I mean, because it's just the self-doubt. Ended up played for the first 45 minutes, a bag of shit. I was like, oh my god. You come in at half time, Williamson, are you tired? And I was just like, well, I'm a little bit. And he went mad. Like literally, just I've never seen his fucking face. He was like screaming, this, that, the other. And I learned from that day. It was like you never show weakness.
No.
I mean, especially that you just do not show weakness, even if you're in so much pain. It's just like no boss, like straight away. Went out second half, I was brilliant. And that was another like, right, okay. this is a mentality thing.
Yeah.
It all comes from within. Like this or the other. That just can't happen. He's put a rocket on my ass, and now you've gone out. So obviously Chris Ewan's like, "Oh, you okay to play?" Yes, boss. Yeah, 100%. Feel great. Can't wait. Like this. That was my kind of. But I remember anyway, the deal didn't get done in time. It didn't go through. So half of me, I was like, oh, thank God, like phew. But on the Tuesday, we had Crystal Palace.
That's it.
And then that was the next.
I think you won 2-0, didn't you?
Yeah. That was the next kind of poignant moment where I realised how, like I say, with the information that you've been telling me that I've been trying to figure out, but I think you really only learn by your own experience, and it clarifies all of the information you've been learning, that all my nerves are only a good thing. And then it's an ongoing joke now that with my missus, she's just like, oh, if you've got a debut, Oxford, Wolves, she's just like, oh, how are you feeling? I was like, well, I'm going to get man of the match. Like, I know now it's a done deal.
Yeah.
Whenever I make a debut, the adrenaline's flowing, I get man of the match. Yeah. And it's happened like the majority of my Watford.
So I've always used the phrase with footballers, particularly younger footballers, it's just your engine starting. So we used to say this when we were doing Torquay, and we'd take them in for their prehab at 205, and they'd all have their spots. Durrell would be here, Gus would be here, Butts of Bliss would be here, and they'd look at me, look a bit nervous, and I'd just say, your engines are starting. It's just adrenaline. It's just nature's way of giving you a Red Bull. Do you know what I mean? That's all it is.
That's what I say to the lads now. I just spoke to he's a northeast-based lad who plays for Fleetwood with Joey. And we had a Zoom call for like two hours, and he just says like, even the thought of like being around them and speaking to them, it just makes me really nervous. And I was trying to kind of convey that of just like, good, like that's what you need. Like if you're not getting nervous, if you're not bothered, then
what's the point?
There's a problem. So now when I look back and I identify those times playing against Fulham, Charlton, Doncaster, Chelsea, when my adrenaline's high, then the next game when I'm feeling flat as a pancake and I'm just thinking like League Two, this or the other.
I remember you saying to me when you were at Southampton, you won a load of Doncaster, and I remember you saying to me, fucking hell, my standards, the difference in the standard of the practice, and you said you remember getting pulled down, and that's what we talk about, environment, lay down with dogs, you get fleas, you're far better to be stretched up. When you went to Newcastle, and again, people might not, this is over 10 years ago now, Newcastle at the time had been relegated from the Premier League. They had a number of Premier League players who were on very big wages. I would say there was a fair amount of unrest. There's probably always unrest with Newcastle because of the owner, and there'd been sort of a bit of a tumultuous off-season. But my memory of that team was that you had a great manager, and that you had some phenomenally strong characters. So for example, I can see you laughing already, I remember Kevin Nolan was part of that team. I think Joey was in prison at the time, am I right? I think I remember Colaccini, I remember Enrique, Steve Harper in goal, Shola, Andy Carroll was just coming to the fore, never really achieved what his potential was because he probably didn't have a very good S&C coach, need someone like me. Alan Smith from Man United. So my memory, I can, in preparation for today, I thought about my two favourite teams. That was probably one of my favourite Newcastle teams that you were for all the Newcastle fans that are going to watch this, which I'm sure will be a lot. That was a pretty special feeling, a special time, wasn't it, in terms of everybody was tight. It felt like it was a tough unit. Is that right?
Yeah, it was. It certainly was. Like I say, the manager was phenomenal. He managed in a way where he got the best out of everyone, and he knew he had a changing room that he couldn't be, like a hairdryer, be dictatorship. He had to manage it, and he was clever, and he did that because those characters, they ran the dressing room.
Who really ran people talk about Kevin Nolan being a great leader. Was that right?
Kevin Nolan, Joey Barton, Alan Smith, Colaccini from such a distance, but the respect. I mean, if do you know what I mean? You'd always get the lads, the leaders in the changing room at half time. You can rally him, come on, grabbing people. It's old school. Do you know what I mean? You hear the stories, like it just doesn't happen now. No. But like grabbing people's shirts, like come on, do you know what I mean? Getting in their face. But when Colo kind of said something, everyone would just be like, ooh, like that. Listen to him.
Was Joey as much of a head case as people think? He's done very well as a manager. He's had a few issues and problems. Was he as much of a head case, or was he just been misunderstood?
Depends what day you come across his path. Joey, he's an interesting
and he might be learning some players, so you got to be a bit careful.
I've got utmost respect for Joey, for him, but in it was after a couple of weeks of me being in that. One training session, we were in a box, just two in the middle, just keep the ball. And every time we went in the middle, he kept like showing the angle to give it to me, and he'd come in and just clatter me. And at first I was just like, all right. And then I started to notice it's just me. It's like, it's not because he's in a bad mood or it's not this, it's just me. And that was it again, another moment where, so he kept doing it. And then I felt the emotion coming up in me. And it wasn't like, I'm not having this aggressive like this. It just felt like, so I went in and give it to him. And he was just like, little smile, but it just kept happening. And then by the end of it, I started on him. I went over there, I was like, what's your problem? Like this, that, the other. And he looked at me and he's just like, calm yourself down, and walked off, made me look stupid. And I'm like ready to go toe to toe. And he just diffused the whole situation, and that was him testing me. And I've actually heard it about a few other people that didn't go quite as well.
Didn't go to plan.
But he was basically saying, look, this is your initiation. What have you got? Because and then we were on Christmas do, and he just came over to me out of nowhere, put his arm around me, and just started saying like, you're one of us. And at the time I'm just like, right. Earn your stripes kind of thing.
I think that what we're talking about is probably really intangible that people wouldn't appreciate in any team sport. But my memory from afar of that team was that I played in teams when I was younger where you felt like you were all, we used to use the phrase at Spurs, one in all in. If there was going to be a fight, you had to be in. It was that sort of thing. That sounds very archaic. That team, to me, of all the teams you played in, looked like the one where if they'd been on a lads' night out in Newcastle, it would have been one in all in. Was that the toughest team you had?
Yes, by a margin. And like I say, I can't sit here to say no, it was run very professionalism. Everyone was bang on it, ice baths, recovery, because it wasn't like a lot of the lads. Nobby was out Tuesday, Saturdays. Like the fact is, but it was that belief system, that confidence that regardless, you show up when you show up to work. And it's like Danny Simpson. Obviously he's gone on to win the Premier League, biggest playboy ever. He's had all sorts of celebrity girlfriends, this, that, the other. But he's the best right back I've ever played next to, because when he showed up, he worked his nuts off, and I respect that. Like say, you see, Premier Leagues in the papers, this or the other, and instantly you think, playboy, whatever. But with him, I've learned now. Do you know what? Like, it's his choice the way he wants to live his life. It's not my choice. I can't live like that. But for him, the application on the actual training field.
I remember you saying that. I mean, like you say, he was part of the team that finished fifth with you at Newcastle, and then he went on to win the Premier League, and he was probably one of those hard workers. Winning the championship that year and getting promotion, was that, say, the highest point at Newcastle? One of them, obviously get to finish fifth in a few years, but was that feeling of kind of walking around the pitch, was that the highest moment at Newcastle or not?
I think it was up there. I think playing in Europe, Europa League was up there, but it's like a snapshot. I've got a picture and I've got my two kids in my arms, and I've got the white t-shirt on, Champions is the other, walking around, and I'm looking, kids are playing, like with all the other kids. I think, like you say, I know you mentioned Kev, when you say that
talkie,
it's that, it's that day, snapshot. It's kind of that where you can kind of just try and stop time. And let's just take everything in, because all of the sessions, the deadlift sessions, the prowler sessions, the kind of the setbacks, the failures, the this and the other, like, make the most of this. We've talked about one of the downfalls of next practice. One of the downfalls of next practice can be that sometimes you're so focused on the next thing, and that's what makes you successful, that you don't smell the roses. And I think probably, I remember that, I've still got a picture on my phone, I'll put it on the show notes actually. I remember that moment and thinking, I think Mike's smelling the roses. I remember Kev on the pitch at Playmore with the last game. You were home for the weekend. We were stood on the side. As a coach or a mentor, when you're bullying someone, and I often say to you, this is why we lift all those fucking weights. It's those moments that I think athletes should enjoy, because I think it motivates them to go back and work even harder. I think the danger is if you never take those few seconds for Kev to be kicking the ball around on the pitch with everyone singing his name, for you to walk around the pitch, then I think almost, I know a lot of athletes talk about come down, when they win, something happens, but they think, didn't really mean anything. Tyson Fury talked about depression. So I do think it's important that people smell the roses. So you get promotion. I remember the off-season, we did some hard work. Your first game in the Premier League is Monday Night Football against Manchester United, and you're marking Wayne Rooney. Tell me first of all about
When you made it to the Prem, was it a I've made it moment? Was it a nervous moment? Or was it just the next practice, the next thing? What was it like?
Wow. Little side story. So you obviously notorious the unrest with Mike Ashley and Newcastle.
Yeah.
So it's just an ongoing saga. But at the time, the whole of pre-season, we hadn't been able to negotiate a bonus scheme for the players.
Right.
So we've obviously got Kevin Nolan, Joey Barton taking the lead on all of this.
Yeah.
You know, the Nicky Butt, they're the voices of the whole team.
Yeah.
So we get to pre-match, and Chris Hughton give a deadline week before, has to be sorted, because it's obviously between the hierarchy and the players. So he kind of steps out of it. Right, deadline gets pushed back. Right, it has to be that. I'm not having this. We've got Man United. I don't want it in anyone's mind. It has to be sorted. So we're sitting a pre-match a couple of hours before the game. And it's, lads, this has to get signed before we kick a ball, else it will be void. Okay, so lads are on, we're all sat around the tables. Kevin Nolan's like, right, is everyone in the fact that if he doesn't give us this, we're not signing, we're all in it, like you say. And when I'm sat there just like, yeah, I'm in. Not knowing that I've just thrown 50 grand down the table, like down the Swanee, because obviously it's not great, and it was probably the smallest bonus system in the Premier League. Yeah. But I think we are the first Premier League football club to play a whole season without any bonuses.
Yeah.
Because they're obviously were on astronomical money. In their opinion, it was the point, the fact, the pride of just like, well, no, we'll shove this in your face. We'll kind of, and they were talking about boycotting the media, this or the other, that actually never came through. Yeah. But for me, it was still the element that it doesn't sit well with me, and part of me wanted to stand up and, do you know what, that's a lot of money to me, so it's going to affect my family. But the environment was too strong, and being part of them, it was far more important.
Yeah, you had very strong leaders. So my memories of sort of start, because of course Chris Hughton didn't last very long, sadly. I think he lasted 11 games or something like that. But the very early memories, there was the Villa 5-0, I believe, wasn't it? Yeah. And there was a Sunderland 5-1. Yep. I got that right. Mm-hmm. So I remember that Joey scored that great goal against Villa, and I think you set up 2 for Andy with like little flick-ons and stuff. So I remember the actual early part of the start in the Premier League as being really positive. Is that how it felt? You were playing, you were winning, the team was doing well?
Yeah, it was.
You're kind of mid-table,
like you say, we come off 2-0, or was it 3-0 against Man United?
2-0 against Man United, as I remember.
And the whole summer leading up to that, when you asked the question, have I made it Premier League? Well, no. It was like, am I good enough to go and establish myself?
Fear again.
Yeah, so I always went back to that default blueprint of just like now you've got to prove yourself, and this is the biggest platform, and it's up to you. So I remember thinking, I've got to. I remember walking off on that pitch after we were champions, and it was like, right, get your families back, tuck the kids into bed, everyone's out. And I remember like, I've got to go out, like I have to, but I just want to start training. Yeah. I've got the Premier League to kind of contend with, and I need to get a head start. Like I can't afford to, lose a minute by drinking and doing this. So I remember just standing there, I just want to go home, like not like say next practice, kind of like I've got to get my mind, because I need to start preparing. Going into the Old Trafford, it was that, right, do you know what I mean? This is where I've kind of switched nerves as like it's more of an enabling thing now. It's going to work for me. So I'll flip that. This is actually where I'm going to see if I actually believe my own self-talk now, because I am shitting myself. Do you know what I mean? Against like Man United, Paul Scholes is just unbelievable to watch. Yeah,
you played against. We'll come on to the players you played. You played against some absolute legends, like say Shevchenko and Torres and Suarez and Aguero, all the best players in the world. I remember being shocked when Chris Hughton was sacked, because I think you were about somewhere like 10th in the table, so it wasn't, you weren't at the top, but you were doing very well for a promoted team. There was obviously a fair amount of stuff in the background. Newcastle fans would know that Mike Ashley sort of wanted his own guy. Pardew came in. It would probably be fair to say that he wasn't a particularly popular choice initially with the fans or with the players. What are your memories of sort of Chris being sacked pretty unceremoniously and Alan Pardew coming in? What was your memory of the time?
Yeah, I mean, at the time, like you say, it's not that we were struggling and things need to be shaken up. And the lads loved Chris Hughton. I mean, the story from the chief exec was, we don't feel as though Chris has got the control necessary to take the club forward. For me, it's bullshit.
Yeah.
It was the fact that they just wanted to get their man in, and whatever ties and politics were going on behind the scenes, to this day I still don't know.
Yeah.
But I remember the day the chief exec come in and got all the first team in, we all sat there, and this is where Joey gets colourful. He went off on one. It was just like, it's effing this, because one thing with Joey, as I've seen him like lose his shit, and he can become a nasty person, but also he's loyal. And when, do you know what I mean, he accepts you and you do that, he will fight you to. And I think he felt like that with Chris Hughton. So he went off it, and Kev Nolan, that one, and Nicky Butler all saying their piece. And I actually think at the time, Joey was like, "Who are you going to bring in? Some muppet like Pardew and Alan Kirbishley?" Went off a few different names, and at the time it was like, we didn't know at the time. So, but he was, like I say, we felt hurt as a group that they'd taken Chris out, and it wasn't right.
Yeah, let's talk about Alan Pardew then.
Mm-hmm.
So, as you say, Chris Hughton was a guy that you had great respect for. When you watch him in the media, he always seems like an incredibly intelligent, articulate, players type of manager. Did a great job with Brighton, for example, recently. By contrast, how would you say? How did you find Alan Pardew? How was he for you as a manager?
I mean, personally, I found that my respect for him grew the longer our time there went on. Initially, he came in. He's got a very calm, confident exterior.
His little dance in the cup final and that,
he's got an aura about him. Obviously, everyone has got stories. You speak friends of friends. He's like this. He had a red Ferrari at Charlton. He's having himself this. I was like, right, okay. I'm just going to take him out. I'll find him like we should to anyone. So he came in, and this is where we didn't get off on the right foot. And what I don't do very well is play the political game. I struggle to play the game. Sometimes my innate emotions. We all need to play the game. We all, at certain times. But I always felt I don't want to be. Authenticity is one of my biggest values. I am whatever, the good and the bad. So I always felt if I was in there, and there's a particular player who I won't name any names, but he's in the manager's office every single morning, all the time, just kind of this, that, the other, banter, and he's had a very good career, and like I say, that's his way, and that's absolutely fine. But inherently, that's not. I can't do that. So if I'm not very happy and I walk in, and the coaches come over, like, morning, how are you? Yeah, morning, and I just kind of walk off. And I think they felt that initially, because I felt every opportunity I was dropped every time. Do you know what I mean? This or the other.
I remember it.
I remember I played, I think we had something like 5 clean sheets in 9 games or something, and Suarez stole a penalty off me.
I remember it.
Absolutely, he played me so he's gone down the outside, he's cut in the box, and we're 2 yards before the 8-yard box, and I've just shoved him, blatant foul, but he's in on goal, there's a chance, and I think I'll give a free kick away because we're on the byline. So I was like shouldn't really be threatening from there, and he stumbled, fell in the box, referee points the spot, and I'm like, right, anyway, Anfield, do you know what I mean? So get over it, we lose the game, get dropped the next game after I've just played in all those clean sheets, and I go in and I'm like, and he's just like, giving that penalty away. And I can't digest that information. And for me, I'm a loyal person. The fact that I've done well all of these games consecutive, but the first opportunity, and it's just a stupid. Like I say, for me, I was thinking when I'm sitting at Portsmouth and the manager's telling me I'm not good enough in the air, and then later, obviously, I noticed the financial implications, and I can't take what you're saying. It's not authentic. It's not truth. So from there, we just it was difficult. But now when I look back, I say Newcastle. You know what I mean? He's probably working with with, blindfold, one hand tied behind his back. So
yeah, my memories of our conversations at that time was that you always spoke very fondly of Chris Hughton, and that you had a sort of a kinship with him, and that team was a really strong team, and that probably with Alan Pardew it was maybe just more a manager-player relationship. That I think you valued maybe that he was pretty good in some coaching scenarios and technical scenarios, and you've often talked about the repetitive nature of sort of how he drilled you, and the team almost sort of, whether it was by design, it looked like he moved on the strong characters.
Yep.
Whether that was because he knew whilst those characters were there he would never have control, I don't know, only he's going to know that. But the team actually does incredibly well and finishes 5th, and it that year was my second favourite team. Now what I remember of, and I think this is 2011 and 12, my memory of that, and I've said this before, you were just winning games 1-0. It was clean sheet after clean sheet. I think you played Swansea when they had Brendan, and I think I got the stat right. They had 75% of possession. Hatton Ben Arfa scores an absolute wonder goal. You end up finishing 5th in the Premier League, and I think it was only about 2 games before the end when you were, because you were right on the challenge of the 4th place for the Champions League. So the team was very successful. You had great players. So I wrote down some names like Colaccini, Hatton Ben Arfa. That was the year you had Demba Ba, Cisse, Cheick Tiote, rest in peace, Andy. You had Andy Carroll, who was at that point doing a phenomenal job. Was that the best team? Was that the best team? And if so, was it the manager, or was it just that the players were very good?
Well, like you say, without deviating too much from the mainstream where we're going with this, at the time, Graham Carr, Chief Scout, actually Alan Carr, the comedian, he was Chief Scout, and he just signed a 9-year deal, because he was the one that was in charge of bringing in. So essentially, time's gone by as the managers makes all the signings, but now it's run as a head coach. And that's why we had the influx of French, and then after that we had the influx of Dutch, because it's a business. He was the man who brought the players in, and obviously Alan Pardew worked with whoever come in, and amongst them were many 15-20 million pound flops who didn't really kind of pay off. But the fact that the players we had then, when I look back now, I mean it's just very difficult. Like I see the initial group was just such a strong group, and it's almost like the Sunderland 5-1 just typified. And I remember we played like that was the character. It embodied the players, the fact that we are just going to fight and bully, and however we're going to find a way. Great team. And obviously I'm not taking away our technical ability. We had like Jonas Gutierrez, like Colaccini, Joey Barton, Kevin Nolan, Alan Smith, Nicky Butt. We had good technicians, but ultimately they were all just warriors. So when we played Sunderland, I remember thinking in the first kind of 20 minutes, this could be one of those days we've missed too many chances, and it's going to be this could bite. But then we're just relentless, relentless, and it's just bang, 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 and that was. I mean, it's a phenomenal result, phenomenal experience for me. And moving on to the other group, it was a different nature.
It looked like it was more of a talented team that had. I remember, for example, Demba Ba. They brought him in. He'd had a knee problem, didn't he? And he just started scoring every week. They bring in Cisse, and he just starts scoring. Ben Arthur. I mean, you spoke to me about Ben Arthur before as possibly the most talented player. I know you didn't think he was a bad egg. You didn't think he was lazy. That maybe he just got some bad information along the way. But I remember that team looking at the talent and thinking that it's a 5th place team in the Premier League.
But what was interesting along that journey is. Who was it? It was Fulham. We were off to Marbella for a mid-season break, and we had Fulham at Craven Cottage, and it was like, come on lads, like this or the other. And I remember there's a few times James Perch is a close friend, we were sitting there chatting just before you do that, and we're like, get a good result here, we'll like proper enjoy this, 2-0 up at half time, like buzz in, come on, like let's go, get on that plane. Lost 5-2. So, do you know what I mean? And that was a kind of, again, Tottenham had think we had a break after that as well. And I remember, again, me and Perch sitting there going, like, just need to get through the first half an hour without conceding. I think we were 3-0 down in 18 minutes.
I remember it, yeah.
And it was, so these were the things that really kicked us on, because they were wake-up calls when we started going on consistent winning sprees, like when we won 3 or 4 on the bounce. We started thinking we've turned into a good team now, so we can start the game where we left off by playing our whatever attractive football we deemed, and our self-image was we're a better team than what we are, and our identity was every time we get thumped, right, we have to go back to just being that basic. Solid base, just go back. And I remember after one of them we had West Brom, and I think that was one of the best performances, kind of what people were talking about. And then was like, you dominated the ball, you did this, you did that. And it's like, no, like first half an hour, all we cared about was just defending. We were getting every man behind the ball. And then we had Hatam, Denver to go, and we scored the goals. And by the end of it, I think Shane Long ended up getting sent off, but we were just like total football. And so people's memory was how we finished that game, not from the nerves and the base of like, this is just all about how we defend.
Be solid.
So we had that base and we built off that, and like I say, Yohan Kabai, he was just phenomenal. And then Papis came in halfway through, and he just, like I say, 2 goals at Chelsea just typified his talent. You take a 30-yard volley coming out of the sky rather than a one-on-one like 20 yards out. Like, he was just very unpredictable.
Yes, I remember that team. As I say, my favourite team I think would be a promotion team. I think that maybe the best team was that year. You then had the 2000, I think it's 13-14, when you were actually supporters player of the year, and the team finished 7th. That was when your name was being banded around as around the England squad. That was the season I think you won at Old Trafford. I think you won at Tottenham. I think you won at all the big grounds. So the team continued to do well under Pardew, and it did evolve. But you think maybe that it was more, without discrediting him, of course, that it was more about the players and the recruitment than perhaps it was having a great manager?
It was everything. It was both. Like, what I could say about Pards was he just had such a cool, calm exterior, and obviously Newcastle, like a goldfish bowl, like the top 4 club in the country for support and for size and structure, and regardless of what was going on, whether we was headbutting people on the sideline or we were having tussles.
David Myler, wouldn't I believe that was?
It's regardless. Like, what I say with him is, he's got passion, but also he can walk into a team meeting and just be like, right, put his jacket up, right, today this is what it's about. And I've had certain managers where you could just see the face change under the different pressure. You can see the bags grow, you can see the anxiety, and then when it starts going wow, you can see, the spring, the body language, you can see. But with Pards, he maintained a very cool, calm exterior, and I think that's what so when you're managing a team of superstars, that's what they need. They can't have somebody who's emotionally up and down, and that's what he brought that stability, because obviously everything was going on off the pitch. He kept the ship calm.
I think, to be fair to any Newcastle manager, say over the last decade under Mike Ashley's ownership, there's probably a lot of off-field stuff that supporters, that media maybe don't even know about, that brings its own pressures or constraints. So my memories of your time under Alan Pardew was that you probably were never in love with the guy. You respected him. You realised he was pretty good at what he did. I always think that the Chris Hughton team was the best team. You had the best players. There's a couple of years, like you say, when you had Loic Remy that year, like you say, you were supporters player of the year. And I just remember game after game, 1-0, 1-0, clean sheet, Loic Remy would score. You were on Sky pretty much every week that season, so I got to watch all those games. And I remember thinking, like, I think that was probably your best year, 13-14. So I remember listening to Talk Sport on the way to take Molly to Studley Knoll. It was coming towards the end of the season. Alan Brazil was talking about the England squad. There was a couple of injuries to, I think John Terry just retired or been banned or something. There was that problem. And I remember all of a sudden, I know your name comes up with Phil Jagielka, Matthew Upson and Mike Williamson, one of those 3. And I remember Molly going into Studley Knoll, thinking, like, is Mike going to be in the England squad in the World Cup, which was in Brazil? So was that the best? Was that your best ever year? When you look back and say, Iron Mike at his best. As I say, that 13-14 season, you finished 7th. Your supporters player of the year. I remember it was probably physically your best year. You were in incredible shape. Is that the best you ever played?
Yeah, I reckon consistently. I think, like you say, there's a lot of different elements that contribute to that whole season. But yeah, I mean, it was for me, it's all about just the evolution of my journey, my identity, and understanding what makes me tick. And I think, like you say, that was. I mean, with Alan Pardew, I think my respect for him grew because I kind of started to realise what conditions he was managing under, and then also towards the end of his stay there, he kept me in, and I remember thinking like, I'm at fault for this. He's probably going to drop me, and he wasn't, and he'd keep me in then, and I think he saw the value, and then also. One of my close friends, Colagini, I didn't realise till afterwards, but he was going in and fighting my corner. He was saying, hang on a minute, like, that's not right. And he had a big say around the changing room.
That's one of the questions I've got for you, actually. My memory of you being at Newcastle, as it should be at any top club, is that they always were looking to replace you. Mm-hmm. So that whether they thought that maybe Stephen Taylor could play ahead of you, and every time he played, maybe the team didn't get the great results, and Mike came back in. I remember they signed Sol Campbell to try and replace you. I remember you texted me on a Saturday morning, I texted you about the game, and you said, he's left me out, Sol Campbell's playing. I don't know if you remember this. I was at my desk, and I said to you, prepare like you're starting, because you could be on the first minute. Remember what happened? Mm-hmm. He tore his thigh in the warm-up, and you played, and he never played again. They signed, I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing this correctly, Mbuiwa, who was a French, I think he was French centre-half. I think he was signed to replace Mike Williamson. I think he lasted about 5 games. There were 3-0 down at Everton at half-time. You came on, I think the team got it back to 3-2, and he never played again. So I think, again, pressure and fear. Mm-hmm. My memory is that Newcastle, as they rightly should do, should always be trying to improve every position, and that every time they tried to replace you, you improved. Is that how you remember it?
I think, like you say, Mapu came in, and there's 2 or 3 centre-halves that they brought in, and genetically and technically were just phenomenal. But to just come in and play at Premier League pace and the physicality, you had to understand the kind of the game, and it took a while. And Premier League teams should always be looking to strengthen all the time. But what they should, in life should happen, but it doesn't happen. The fact that players play on merit. So regardless if someone's come in for 15 million or someone signed for 900 grand, whoever deserves the shirt should play. But ultimately, the politics said that if we spent 15 million on him and he doesn't play, his value is going to plummet, and we need to turn him around. So when they identify a player's not good enough, it means we need to sell him quick. So when someone like Chekiote or Kabai come in, then it's like, right, 5-year deal, let's tie him down, because we know that's just going to make his value go through the roof. And they know the players, but when lads come in off the back of a good season in France or Holland, and they're not going to cut it here, then they've got to kind of turn around, and they have to play to keep the value. To try that's the politics side of it. But for me, I remember every time I said to you, they've signed this guy, they've said good, like, but that's me, and I'm going to drop down the pecking order, good, because then it's going to have to make you better. And that was so along the whole time is me learning the ingredients and the perspective and the outlook that a winner has to adopt. How should I become a winner?
I think I used to text you Newcastle signing Vidic and Sergio Ramos. I used to text you that and say, Ramos is signed tomorrow, what are you going to do about it? You would say, I'm going to fucking outwork him. And I think that's probably a point for all athletes, all young footballers, is that maybe in their head they think, I hope my club doesn't sign anybody because that's going to be a bad thing for me. I would encourage people to take the complete opposite view and to say, sign the best player in the world, I'll outwork him because it'll improve my level. And I think that's definitely what happened with you.
And like I say, I think that's that's the whole journey of being able to understand and why, because of, like you said there, players, I don't want them to come in and sign in because that's going to threaten my position. But ultimately, when you just fully understand and buy into, well, we're only here to improve and to grow and get better, and I prefer to play 20 games but 20 unbelievable games rather than playing 30, 40 games when there's no competition and there's default and I'm bang average. So everything that comes along is, what is your outcome? And if your outcome is to play, then you have to get better. So that's the driver to that, and it takes players a while to see that, and some players never see it because they're self-doubt and that is too great for them. But for me, it was that, and that's what's been the juice, having all of the uncertainty and the doubt, obviously going through my journey, having someone like yourself to kind of direct it. Bully. A lot of times I think he doesn't get it. He's like miles off it. He's not here. He's not experiencing this. So that's my validation for my self-doubt. But then ultimately of going full circle and then experiencing it and then looking back on it and being like, right, so now, you know, I've got a very consistent map of the world that nobody can change.
So my memory is that there was a little bit of speculation about Alan Pardew's future for a few weeks, and then all of a sudden he was off to Crystal Palace. I think I'm right. He kind of left 3/4 way through the season, maybe January, February time, something like that. It came maybe a little bit out of the blue, and John Carver took over as the Smiles. Let's be careful how we do this, but John Carver took over as, I believe, was caretaker manager. I can't remember who his assistant was.
Steve Stone.
What I do remember is that, shall we say, the team appeared a little bit fragmented, that maybe there were cliques. I want to be a little bit careful. Maybe there were some cliques within the team. Maybe the team had some talent. For example, I think you had players like Sissoko who then went on. You still had a lot of really talented players, but it appeared from the outside that it might have lost some of the things that had made it strong. It appeared to be a team in decline, and the team was slipping down the league. I was actually in this building watching the Leicester game when you were sent off just after half time for a foul on Jamie Vardy, who kind of nipped the ball out in front of you and you took him out. It looked a lot worse than it was because it was on the sideline. And we had the very famous Mike Williamson got himself sent off on purpose, which, me knowing you and being as protective of you and loyal as you as I am, made me want to go and smash the guy's face in, which of course is not a logical response. People that know you and that know you within football, everybody in Newcastle knows that was the biggest load of shit that anyone could ever possibly say. And the guy, in my mind, is a complete prick, but obviously you wouldn't say that because he's a very respected Newcastle manager. I remember you messaged me and I actually drafted a bit of a statement for you just to say, listen, the team needs to focus on staying in the Premier League. Don't cause any trouble, because you could very easily have caused trouble, because what he'd said was very negative about you and your character, completely wrong. I think it was probably more just a mistimed tackle, a little bit of frustration. I know you told me a little bit about some things leading up to it. What were your memories of, say, that incident? Because it all seemed crazy, but also, am I right in that the team was fragmenting and was declining at that point?
Well, I think one thing to understand at Newcastle, I don't think my time there was ever, I come in, we're here, then we build, then we build, then we build, then we build. It was a business. So we would kind of build, and then we'd build, and then we'd sell players, and something else would happen, and we'd go back like this. So most seasons we were either fighting for Europe or fighting to stay in the Premier League. It was a yo-yo kind of scenario, and season on season. So like I say, it was ultimately like the season after when we were in Europe, we survived, was the second to last game of the season to stay in the Premier League. So it was always a very up and down place and environment in terms of the products. So what I remember of when John come in was he had, he's very experienced and very
good golfer, wasn't he?
Good golfer. He's very experienced, well thought of, obviously under Bobby Robson. And
he's been a coach, really, essentially. He'd been a coach.
And he is like, I speak to a lot of people that that mention he's like really good. The guy I work with, Ian, he's like, he was one of the best coaches I had in the academy. So, like I say, he had a lot of strengths, but when he came in as manager, he had a lot of passion, and it was about trying to channel that passion and trying to make it to the outcome of what we wanted. So for me, I'm always a turn up to training every single day, and I always want to do what I can to improve and get better. So I felt as though leading up to the kind of the Leicester game, there was a few little kind of teething problems here and there, kind of didn't feel as though some players and management were putting commitment in that I would expect. And what I felt as though you've got managers that manage people on merit. You've got managers that manage people on their star reputation. And then it was. I've always been somebody that if you're going to dig someone out as a manager, dig them out for the right reasons. And I've had numerous managers that every single week they dig the same people out just because they're easy targets, and they'll always leave the superstars, because anybody that can potentially threaten their power, they don't like confrontation, so they're just young lads all the time, and I can't tolerate that. So at half time, I think he come for me because I missed a header for our corner. I've got a front post and I've glanced it and it's gone wide, and I should have scored it. He's saying to me. I remember it. So it kind of got a bit fractious at half time because I felt as though he was going for the similar. So we were kind of toe to toe, got heated. And where I take responsibility is I let my emotion get the better of me. Emotion high, logic low. Exactly. So I had so much good intention, but at the time I was just brimming with kind of anger and frustration, and I wanted to go and put Vardy in the stands like I did, but with the ball, for a statement to get us all going, and to kind of like invigorate, because that's it's like St James's Park is notorious for when you're under the cosh and you're getting penned in, one tackle can just make the stadium like the tackle on Benteke against Aston Villa when it was 0-0 with about 10 minutes to go, and he was one-on-one with you won the ball, you lay it off to Tiote, you go up the field and score. And I remember, as you say, you made the tackle and the whole ground went up. So for me, I've got to put my hands up. Like I say, emotion was high, logic was low. I went out there, and Pardew was slightly quicker than I anticipated. He was very quick. And ended up getting sent off, and come in kind of wanted to apologise to the lads, that's the other, and then that was it. He was gone. Do you know what I mean? Mistake. And it was only until I got home and I kind of, my phone was blowing up and this or the other, and then I was like, right, okay. It was just one of them. Obviously as your friend, I'm going to be biased, but as a coach, I can't think of anything worse. I can't think of a worse direction of duty than to, you use the phrase dig out, I would say sell down the river. A really honest, loyal, hardworking, who just kind of, as you say, just made a mistake. When I watched it, the first time I saw it, obviously I had a lot of emotion about it, but I just thought, you're clueless. Like no good coach is ever going to do that to a player. And I thought you handled it really well. You had a 1-game suspension, and then you had to come back and play. And I remember that was my advice to you, was just focus on getting back. The team's got to stay in the league. But as a player, did you feel a bit let down by it? Well, no. Because initially, yes, should I answer that? But then ultimately, when I look back, and obviously his response was, he actually lived around the corner from me at the time. He was like, I wanted to come around your house in the evening, this or the other, but I just didn't think it was right. We had a conversation at the training ground, and I basically said, listen, I can't accept what you did and how you hung me out, but I'll give you everything and that's my professional kind of commitment to you in this football club, and that is, you know, what it is. So, and the fact that, you know, he put me in for the West Ham game. We had to win to stay up.
That's right. Yeah.
And he made, I think that was when it really the chips are down in situations like that. It was notorious at Newcastle. You play all your players that you bought in, and you're kind of like prima donnas, and you know, technical players. But then when you need to go back, you go to the core. Yeah. Maybe not the so, you know, good and the players on the eye, but players that you just know what you're going to get from you, and you're going to get a full-blooded performance, and that's what he did at West Ham. So on the whole, when I look back, I've got no hard feelings. I see John now, you know, I've had a few messages back and forth. People say, oh, you think, no, not at all. Yeah. Because I can understand my emotion was high, my logic was low, and perhaps that was the same in his press conference.
I think it does a lot about your character to definitely not hold a grudge, and that's you all over. And as I say, you took the bigger picture that what Newcastle Football Club needed was you to play, the team to win, and stay in the league, you know, regardless of anything else. And I actually think, although that was a difficult moment, I think you handled it like incredibly well. And to go back to toughness, which is probably going to be something we'll talk about in part 2 of our show here, I think that was probably something where your toughness shone through, because I think it could have been, you could have had other players who were signed off with, you know, stress. You could have had other players who'd sued him. You could have had all sorts. So I think, although it might appear to be a real negative thing, the reason I wanted to cover it, I think it just showed your toughness. So you were suspended the following week, and then Newcastle needed to win at home to West Ham. I can't remember who scores the first goal, but I remember Gutierrez scores the second. Takes his shirt off. Gutierrez, always a friend of yours and someone who'd recovered from, I think it was testicular cancer. He was very, very popular in the area, sort of a bit of a cult hero. I remember watching that game, and when Gutierrez scored, I watched all your games in the shirts. I remember thinking, it's time for a new chapter. I don't even remember if I said it to you, but I just had a feeling that you now needed something new. Now, you did stay at Newcastle the following season before you moved on. At that point, say when you secured secured survival, the team, as I say, looked to be fragmenting a bit. It slipped off a few little clicks. There was a lot of uncertainty with the manager and stuff. Did you get the feeling that your time was coming to an end, or were you just still head down next practice?
At the time, I think it wouldn't be something that was evident that I actually started to think now, but my actions spoke that, and my wife even says that. She said after that I felt as though you were looking for a different challenge, and I was like, no, I can't remember that. I remember just still trying to dial in to what was in front of me at next practice, but she said, but ultimately you felt as though like you were actively like listening to the noise outside and this and the other. And I was like, well, right, okay. But so when I retrospective, I think I could see. Yeah, so when Kev was sacked with Torquay United, when he was, I don't know if sack's the right word, but be careful because I'm sure there'll be lawyers that could do. When Kev left Torquay United, he called me on the Wednesday morning and said, I'm on my way and they're sacking me. My emotion for him was relief. I said to him, thank God for that. You know, we've been doing it for 2 or 3 years. People will understand, and obviously we're going to do a podcast, me and Kev, to sort of fill in some gaps. It wasn't easy for Kev. There were a lot of things which you know about that were going on that made his job incredibly difficult. My sense for him as a friend and as someone that coached him for at that point 7 or 8 years and worked with him was just great relief. My feeling when Gutierrez scored against West Ham was that you'd climbed this incredible mountain to get to where you'd got to, from the schoolboy at Torquay United, along the journey through an ACL, through some ups and downs. You'd got to one of the biggest clubs in Europe. You'd had some amazing experiences. You'd finished 5th. You'd made the semi-final of the Europa League and played against Benfica. You'd been Supporters Player of the Year. You'd won over the fan base. You were Iron Mike. So from going from a guy that was brought in to replace Stephen Taylor, really, who was like a local national, kind of a local hero, you were Iron Mike. You were very, very popular. But I got this feeling that the kind of weight of the pressure, that now the best thing for you, I remember thinking at the time Bournemouth would be a great move. Bournemouth's up the road. He could come down here and train. He could use his experience with a new club in the Premier League, with a manager that I think he would get on with it. I remember maybe I started to think about it. Maybe I even subconsciously started to make you think about it. I remember thinking at that moment, it's time for a new chapter. It felt like you had
run your race, won the war, climbed the mountain, whatever phrase you want to use, and that the best thing that could have happened for you at that point would have been a fresh challenge. Now, it didn't really work out that way, but what did happen was Steve McLaren came in. And I remember talking, me and you speaking about how you found Steve McLaren, and you had a period whereby I suppose you were kind of, what's the right word, edged out or, pushed to the side. What are your memories of Steve McLaren coming in, as a coach, and sort of that period where it was probably made clear to you that, listen, we're going to go in a different direction, even though you maybe are part of the core group here. Yeah. Like in the same way that the championship team had Kevin and Joey, you were still part of the core group. What are your memories of that period where you were essentially told, I might, you ain't going to be part of this anymore?
Yeah, like I say, at the time, it was an end of an era for me. It was like, right, next season, next practice. Steve McLaren came in, and from his first presentation, from the culture that he was trying to set, from the environment, I was bought. I was like, yeah, this is. I can see why.
With the book under his arm, wasn't it? Yeah.
Yeah, I can see why he's managed. At the highest level. With England, this, that, the other, he brought in Steve Black, who he's quite a big character. And the Lions and that. So I was interested. I wanted to learn. I wanted to soak up how could they help me. And pre-season, played all pre-season. Colaccini, I was in contract kind of negotiations. So it was all up and down with him. I played all of pre-season, and I thoroughly enjoyed it. And until the first game of the season, which then it's like, right, you're not involved, and it was difficult for me to take. But all I could say is my experience at Newcastle. I was like, okay, it's fine, it's politics. I can he's not picking the team, so it's not a personal thing. So do you know what I mean? I showed him all the respect I possibly could. I trained hard. I did what I could. And it was just that acceptance. And I think, like you say, retrospectively looking back, I think that was when you can kind of say, right, now it's time to move on.
My wish for you as your friend, etc., would have been that at the end of that season, a new challenge would have come up, because I think you probably needed it. I think Newcastle, we're going to talk about the area and the hotbed that it is. I think there might be a shelf life for footballers in a place like Newcastle, because as you've said to me before, everywhere you go, everyone's talking about the football club, and you did a phenomenal amount of community work there that you should be really proud of. You've gone back to the area, you call it home, but I think it's pretty intense. And I think for footballers it might have, particularly with the uncertainty you had and all the changes in managers and the backroom stuff, I think there might be just a shelf life where it just wears you out. My wish is now that you left after the West Ham and had another challenge. It didn't really work out that way. There was a kind of a bit of a crazy situation where you were loaned to Wolves. It looked like you were going to go back to Newcastle and play. You went back, you tear your hamstring, you get loaned to Wolves. There's a bit of a misdiagnosis or undiagnosed hamstring, very simple hamstring injury, which doesn't really get dealt with, so it goes on to be quite a chronic thing that requires surgery. So you end up missing a fair period of football, which wasn't like you rarely missed football. I remember the weekend that you came home, Torquay and Barrow, and we had the huge Chinese the night before. We played American football. You can watch me catch a 40-yard touchdown. And I remember for the first time I got the sense that football was becoming a job for you. Right. So I remember that we sort of sat at the summer house, we chatted a lot. And I remember for the first time you didn't feel to me like you were quite as in love with football.
Right.
I don't know if you remember it, but I remember you came to watch the American football. You said, how the hell don't you snap your ACL playing that game? And you left, and I think you were probably a little bit refocused. Do you think that was a period where football was becoming a job? Do you think you were falling out of love with it a little bit?
I'm unsure at the minute how much my pure passion and love for football, or the competition and the environment and the culture and pushing yourself. And I think that, like, I've had friends that literally could be, Iceland team playing or a Swedish second division league, and they'll be watching football. I'm somebody that likes to watch football when I feel as I can learn something from it. So if I've got friends playing, or whether it's a Liverpool, Man City, or it's managers I really respect, and I'm watching the technical side of it, tactical side of it. But the game itself, I do love it. I've got a lot of passion for it. But it's the pushing myself. It's being in that dark place and building an identity and a mindset where I know what I'm about, and I can kind of rise from the ashes, so to speak. And I'm in love with that. I'm in love with just fighting challenges and obstacles and this or the other. And when I was coming out at the end, and like you say, it's kind of like down the mountain and seeing it as a job, it's because I was questioning, is this my mountain? Is this or is it changed? Is it kind of my time to think about something else? So there's a lot of internal kind of reflection going on, and ultimately I had pretty much the best part of a year is being injured. And it was kind of like trying to figure out the next practice. But ultimately, I think it has to happen like this, because, like you say, it's still, for me, we are driven innately initially, and then once you reach your goals, once you whatever it is, paid your mortgage off or sorted your family out and this or the other, then you've got a crossroads. And I think that's why depression, alcoholism, gambling addiction is so rife in football, because they spend their whole career pushing and striving for this pinnacle, and then when they get there and they feel it, they don't feel any different about themselves. And when the money runs out and they're not a big club anymore, what's their identity? And for me, it was a massive kind of understanding, like my identity is always about my family, and that's always primary focus, and I've got them. But it was professionally, like you say, I started to probably look at it as like more of a job, right? And then I maybe started to look at, this contract's going to see me through to here, and I'll be able to do this. I can maybe I'll look after my family for this amount, and I lost that sight of just whatever it takes to get to that pinnacle.
I think the reason I think this is relevant is that for the exactly reasons you mentioned, is that whatever people's goals are in life, I think, so if my goal was to run the best gym in the country, etc., when you reach the top of that mountain, I think hopefully you should get some incredible satisfaction, and then be able to see the next mountain that you're as excited about,
in a perfect world,
a different thing or the same thing or whatever. My sense, I remember we walked my crazy dogs around the quarry, my sense was that you'd had such a pronounced steep mountain to play for such an incredible club for so long in front of 50,000 every week, football hotbed, absolute dream, that it was always going to be a come down. And I remember you talking almost about retirement, and you weren't too sure about carrying on playing. And I think the phrase I encouraged you was to say, listen, just make sure you've squeezed every ounce out of this sponge. Don't end with regret. What's interesting is that I always said to you from day one, I think because you're a deep thinker, you're perceptive, you're sensitive, you'll be a very good coach and manager. And for the first probably 15 years of our relationship, you always said to me, too much time, don't want anything to do with that. I'm not getting involved in that side of things. And I always said, well, don't close the door on it. And I remember on one of the quarry walks, I actually said to you, well, maybe coaching is the next mountain, because I think the juice you might get from helping young Iron Mikes in the same way that maybe I did for you might be the thing that gives you even more pleasure than being a player. I remember when Dan Butler come down, worked out with us, and we took him for breakfast, and he had about 14 sausages at Ockham Farm. And I remember watching the interaction between you. I think this is 2016 maybe, something like that. I remember sitting back and watching the interaction, and for the first time you were in the role of coach. You were talking to Butts, who at the time was at Newport, I think, and you were almost counselling him about dealing with certain situations, about how you'd done it. I remember stepping back and watching the discussion and feeling like, don't look now, but you're doing exactly what I think you were probably made to do, which is to use the first mountain and the journey to impact people like Butts, you had a profound impact on in 3 or 4 days working out together, so that they can then go on and live their dreams. without jumping too far ahead, because there's a few gaps before we get to Gateshead, do you think that coaching is the new mountain, or is it just, I'm not sure, I love Gateshead, it's my area, it's my home, or is being the best manager and the coach that I and Mike can be the new mountain in the same way that maybe the Premier League was?
So the
Gateshead fans are thinking he's not going to go leave, is he?
No. Why I'm doing it at the minute is because I love it. I'm still playing and getting to coach and manage, which is perfect scenario for me.
Yep.
So for me, my mountain is, at the minute anyway, is not I'm going to specify it's in this role. My mountain is in life. So next practice, the philosophy of Europa is how can I maximise where being in the room right now. And at the minute when I'm in, having this interview or this, podcast, and then next I'm going to be driving back to Newcastle, can I be the very, very best version using all of my experience with self-doubt and uncertainty, nerves, all the highs and the lows, that is all going to contribute to just me being in the room. So at the minute, I've got 5 children, based up in Newcastle, player manager. My life is phenomenal and I'm fully enjoying it, and I spoke to someone the other day and I said it'd be hard to push to put an explanation on it, but I kind of sometimes feel as I've never enjoyed football so much. And they're like, what, even like the derbies and this or the other? Well, no, the environment, the atmosphere, the emotion was incredible, but actually day to day now I don't think I've ever enjoyed my job, stroke my life so much. And I think looking back now, the dark times, or the tough times, should I say, I've gone through, will serve as a platform for what I'm doing now. I think we should probably cover that as well, is that your value system would always be, that's why we get on so well. Loyalty is important to us, mega important, we're very loyal people, family first. You obviously have a big family, and Newcastle is home. So I think, if you were offered a manager's job, someone that was 3 hours away, my sense is immediately you'd say, I'm not doing that, because I want my family to want to spend a lot of time there. So I think we should probably cover that. That was a little bit of that was a very politically correct answer about what your next mountain was, so that no Gateshead fans started to get worried. We've mentioned next practice about 15 times. I stitched you up on the Heat Army podcast a few weeks ago where I said, ask Mike to define next practice, because at the time all the media were loving on Gateshead and I was worried that the players were going to start to listen to the noise. I think we should probably try and explain to our viewers, because we're getting close to wrapping part 1 here, what next practice means. Kev, as I say, when I started work with Kev in 2011, primarily he wanted to extend his career as a player, but he was very keen to learn about coaching, so you need to understand next practice philosophy. And even now he says to me, how do I explain it to people? And I said, well, you need to work that out for yourself, mate. So I think we should try and give people an idea of what next practice means between the two of us. What does next practice mean to you? Because I've got it on a watch, which I should have worn today, which you very kindly bought me on the holiday, this t-shirt in Jamaica, which you very kindly paid for, best 2 weeks of our lives. I've got next practice on a watch you bought me. I mean, you've obviously, next practice is after every message you send me. And I don't think that is impactful to explaining next practice. Maybe it's unexplainable because it's very personal. To the fact that when I see you show up in the gym every morning and say, I've got a topic about Buddhism that I want to talk to you, and you just shut me down straight away, and it's like, it's your set, and I'm like, right, okay, well, we'll put a pin in that and we'll talk about it. And then when I come to bring it up and we're talking about something, it's bang, it's next practice. So like you say, it's difficult to explain, but it's a mentality. And I'm on that podcast, and I'm like, right, okay. So I go into it, and after about 10 minutes I was speaking to him, he's like, wow, I think that's slightly a bit
he wanted
more depth. More depth. So anyway, next game.
Who's your favourite player?
So it
was over his edge.
It's a personal thing to me about being in the room, about squeezing the juice. It's about bringing all of my experience and living all of the elements in the moment at the best capacity that you possibly can be. And it's about experiencing that moment through your value system.
Yeah.
So when we're in the gym, our highest value is our family still, but not right then. Our highest value is to get the most amount of reps out of that kind of set, and make sure you get the most amount of juice. And then as soon as you're right bang in the car, getting home, then your highest value is to be there in the room.
Exactly. So I think next practice, as I try and teach it to any athlete or person I work with or counsel or coach or mentor, is essentially about the ability to have a really, really strong focus on a single task at any given time. The next element to that is, why is that task so important? That, as you say, comes from the value system, and then the roles in your life, and then the goals. Next practice is designed to teach people to not be distracted. I think a number of people fail on things that they could very easily achieve, because when they need to be dialed into a single action, they're thinking about their shopping, or they're thinking about their misses, or they're thinking about something else. So we use the phrase "in the room." It's a very famous book called The Impact Code by Nigel Reisner, where the I is about being in the room, and it says the skill should be able to be completely focused and just think about one thing. Next practice to me is largely about teaching people to clarify what it is they want, to visualize it, to be incredibly focused on it, and then to break down the singular actions they need to undertake to complete it, and then to be 100% on that action and nothing else. Because distraction to me is, will kill perfection and achievement and success. And that's why often you might say to me, or people that work with me, like Johnny, Johnny probably gets more frustrated, ask me a question about something. Sometimes I'll say, I'm not talking about that now, we're doing this. Because I believe that, you should be completely in the room, completely focused. I think particularly for young people, why is next practice so important for a lot of the young people that I've perhaps coached, footballers in particular? Because one thing that footballers do is they listen to noise. Internal noise, external noise. Internal noise, I'm not good enough. Internal noise, I'm the best player in the world. External noise on social media, he's shit, he missed a pen. It all becomes a complete distraction. What they have to learn to do is they have to learn to focus on the things they need to do to improve their craft. So, we talk about Butts a lot. What was the thing that I really encouraged Butts to work on? When I first started working with him, I said, look, you can be a 2-for-1. You've got so much physical potential that you could almost be like having 2 players on the pitch, but you need to fucking work it, kid. You've got the potential, but you've got to grind. And then I taught him how to grind. He got some success from it. He buys into it, he believes it, and he's obviously had some success with that. So I think next practice in football, particularly for youngsters, would be a great gift in terms of helping them to realize that their potential is very possible, but only if they're particularly focused. I also think next practice can mean different things to different people, like faith and religion does. And I would encourage people to sort of evolve it in their own way. But essentially it's about being very focused on the things that are most important, avoiding distraction, making sure that the goals you've set are in alignment with your values. So like I say, me and anyone that knows me or you, we're very similar. Family first, incredibly loyal to, no one will ever outwork us. These are sort of fundamental pillars of who we are. And then we have our roles in life, like we're parents, we're athletes, business, whatever, and we'll assign goals to those. And once you've assigned those goals, we decide what the actions are, and we do not deviate. Doesn't matter what time of day it is, how tired we are, we're going to do that thing. That's essentially next practice.
That's what I said, wasn't it?
That's kind of what you said on the podcast. It's kind of what you said on the podcast. And as you say, I got the impression that they were like, what the fuck is he going on about here? Can't we just talk about the game? So I think I've got about another 20-25 topics here. In part 2, we're going to go into a bit more about Gateshead, which I think has almost been like a second life for you, really. It definitely seems like that's been something that you've absolutely loved and relished. We're going to talk a little bit in part 2 about living the dream, because I think for a lot of people, they see all the great parts of being a professional footballer, particularly in the Premier League, but maybe never some of the negative things that might go with it. We're going to talk a little bit about Newcastle as an area, because I don't think people ever really appreciate what a hotbed it is, how much passion there is. So that's it. That's in part 2. Anything else you think we should cover in part 2? We're going to talk about physical prep, because we're going to talk about physical prep.
Yeah, like you say, we could be here for
a
weeks.
Long time.
But yeah, fundamentally, that's what I'm thoroughly enjoying, is kind of conceptualizing the next practice, but actually saying to the lads, thought, word, and action is all very impactful. So when I say to them, it's identifying their value system. So me as a coach, enjoying this understanding, identifying their value system and saying, where do you want your career to go? Well, I want to play in the Premier League. Right, okay.
They all say that.
So like, let's go and get a typical day in Kobe Bryant's life for this to be the best, right? And go through all of that, but make it all so transparent. So living the dream turns to, wow, look at that commitment, look at that single-minded discipline, look at that. So do you want that day? Wow, not really. Well, do you want the dream? Because like you say, it's very superficial to just be like on an Instagram, looking in Dubai, looking at the papers, the actual...
They ain't doing jack shit. You got to do the work.
And that's what I enjoy conveying to the lads, because then you got people like Butts who are just like, I am willing to do that. I'll eat it up. And then you just see them go boom. Wow.
Yeah, so we should probably finish with a bit of a teaser actually for part 2. Are your players good losers? I think Gateshead players are good losers. We've talked about this.
So Tuesday morning that's my first presentation.
This won't be out by Tuesday, so you'll be fine.
Right, okay.
You'll be fine. So I would really like to come to Gateshead and talk to your players. If I live near Gateshead, I would do it exactly the way I did it with Torquay. I would never work with property developers. I'll never set foot in Playmore again until either I'm involved in ownership or there are new owners or anything like that. But I would do Gateshead. Because I think it's a proper fan. It's fan owned, isn't it? Mm-hmm. It's an incredible club. I think that your players are good losers. I've said this to you about a month ago. It's one of the things that worries me is that the press and the media around Gateshead was happy to lose in the playoffs. Mm-hmm. Knowing me like you know me, you know that I don't like to lose at anything. And that when you knocked out in the FA Cup, you played phenomenally well, but you kind of still lost the game. Everyone was happy with it. So do you think Gateshead players are good losers?
I think the answer is I think that we've got a weak underbelly. I think we've got I think that could correspond to being a weak loser.
We talked about whether young men are set for high performance or whether they're set to protect themselves. I think we talked about this very commonly. Young players who've been at high Premier League clubs, Championship clubs, been released, come to lower league clubs because they've learned self-doubt, because they've lost a little bit of confidence. Sometimes they're programmed to avoid the pain of failure, so they don't want to reach out and try things. They just want to be comfortable and protected. I don't know any of your players personally. I've never spoke to any of them. My observations are purely from what Heat Army podcast, I'm sure we'll tag them in this, and from following it from afar. But I think it's common with a lot of low league players. I think the potential in Gateshead is to win that league by a long, long way. I think you got some incredibly talented players, but you know that I don't particularly value talent. So I think maybe in part 2 we'll start with our Gateshead good losers.
Yeah, I think managing expectations is part of that as well. Walking the league this season
by 25 points.
Yes, But 100%. Like you say, I love the understanding of what are the limits of our vision. Like you say, because if I would have, for me getting to the Premier League ultimately began. But what if it was this? What if it was that? By the time I'm at Newcastle and my limits are that much higher, my vision, is that much higher. I'm still climbing. Where at some point, and that's what you said, learning protection is that because they've hit where they feel comfortable and their mechanisms are protection.
If you relate it to your career, Wickham could have been your end game. Wickham could have been your comfort zone. Big fish, small pond, popular captain, nice area, all of those things. I think why it wasn't your end game is because you conditioned your vision so strongly. I'd probably bullied it through you so much for the first 2 or 3 years of our friendship that you knew it was a stepping stone. But I think for a lot of the guys who are at, say, clubs like Gateshead now, that might be their comfort zone, and they don't want the fear again of kind of rejection and failure, all the things you talked about. And maybe your role this year is going to be encouraging a few of them to ride the lightning, and go for it. So that's part 1. Part 1.